Hi there, I'm Edmeé García. I'm also known as Diosaloca or the Crazy Goddess. That's kind of my nickname as a spoken word poet. I started getting involved in spoken word poetry in Mexico City in 2008. That was November 2008 was the first time I attended to a poetry slam, and then I was hooked. And I think the thing that hooked me was that I remember that while I was on that stage reading my poem, there was a very, very involved audience that day, and they really reacted to whatever I was saying step by step. And at that moment, I was reading this very conflicted poem that involved present mobility problems in Mexico City and also a lot of heartbreak. And having a community around me responding to that really made a difference in my life, because then I realized that I was not like this fungi suffering by myself in a corner of the world, but I was connected to a greater audience, to a community, and to my fellow human beings that also experience some kind of suffering. So after that, I started attending to more open mics, poetry slams, and I started developing some projects that were, based around spoken word poetry. My first spoken word poetry book that I was just written deliberately to be performed aloud. All of these poems were just like thought to be performed aloud in front of an audience. So the first poetry book I did that way was published in 2010 by Mi Cielo Ediciones, and it was called the Red Beach Project. And yes, you got it right, it was kind of an erotic project. And I presented here that poetry book in Mexico City. And then the next year, I presented another one called Chilanga Habla. So Chilanga is Mexico City inhabitant. That's what it means in Mexico City slang. That's how people call us. And Habla, so that's speaks. So it was something like an inhabitant of Mexico City speaks, or a native of Mexico City speaks. And it was about the relationship of love and hate that many people here have with this humongous city and its problems. And I presented it in the center of Mexico City in a very special venue that had a special value for me, so I was very happy. And the particular thing about this project is that it was written to be performed by a poet using a Line 6 DL4, which was at least effect thing and looper that I was using at a time. And it was a very, very, I call it long breath performance, because I definitely need a lot of breath. It lasted almost an hour, and I did all of that by myself, so it was very demanding that way. And then in August 2012, I finished the last of a trilogy of spoken word poetry books, which was called El Bonbon Voodoo, or like the voodoo marshmallow. I know it sounds really weird in English, but basically it refers to something magical, powerful, and sweet. So I still perform some of those poems nowadays, and I'm really happy to do so. But I've also been preparing during the last month some poems that have gone through a process of translation to English and Portuguese that I'm going to be presenting in November in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. So I'm very, very excited about that. And as I work as a spoken word artist, I had the opportunity of working with other kinds of artists. Some of them were actors, directors, musicians, rappers, and all sorts of people that really enrich my way of seeing life and also of performing my poetry.